Hi everyone, welcome to the video. Welcome to my channel. I wanted to do a reading vlog, and the last reading vlog I did consisted of me reading like a ton of books. So I thought for this one I would do a dedicated reading vlog for one specific book, but there's like a little bit of a twist to it. So I was looking at my e-reader last night and I noticed that I had a lot of books like saved up. I usually don't do that. I have like 40 books unread on my Kindle, and that's not good. But I noticed that I did get in a anthology of monster romances called Monsters in Love, Wicked Tales, and Monstrous Ever Afters by a ton of authors. I think there's like quite a handful of stories in this anthology, so I thought it'd be really fun to read them with you all. I have done like a monster romance reading vlog before, like last year, I want to say. This is kind of like part two, except this is just like one really long book with like a ton of romances. I think my Kindle was like, it might take you like 22, you know how it tells you like how many hours it will take you to finish the book? This one said like 22 hours. We are going to dedicate ourselves to that this reading vlog. I hope you enjoy it. This is monster romance. They typically tend to be kind of spicy, smutty. If that's not your thing, this might not be your video. The first one we're going to be reading is called The Orc Upstairs by C.M. Nakosa, which I've read before. She's the author of that very popular Morning Glory Milking Farm book, which I really enjoyed. It was really fun. It was ridiculous. I think this is going to be a historical romance where our main character probably falls in love with an orc, from what I can see of like the first few pages. I hope you enjoy this video. Let's get on to story number one. Hi, so I finished the first story in this anthology, The Orc Upstairs by C.M. Nakosa. I love this author. I've read her work before. I think it's really fun. I've never read her historical romance. I'm like 99% sure this story is somewhat connected to another one of her like full-length novels that you can probably find on Kindle Unlimited or her website or whatever. But it was really fun. I love a historical setting. I read it like all the time. This one was about a woman, I believe her name was Lily. She's in her early 30s and she works as a maid in this home for this orc lord, and she starts catching feelings for him, in particular after she cleans his library, and then she finds a certain book with certain salacious imagery in it, and she's like, oh wow, oh wow. I'm thinking like what would be fun to do with this video, and like the stories within these books, because they're not full length, so I can't really go into much detail, but maybe I could rank them in order of my favorites, and I could give them a star rating in relation to like the other books in the story. But like I'm not expecting like, you know, I'm not expecting life-changing literary masterpieces here either. Like I just want to have a good time. Yeah, and these books, these stories don't have covers. Like they don't have cover art or anything, so I can't really like show you anything, but maybe I'll find like fan art or something and then I'll like put it here. Or maybe like I could cast what they would look like in my head if this was like a TV show or something. I don't know. So yeah, I finished the first story. If you like a cute love interest, like he's not like overbearing or rude, this isn't like bully, enemies to lovers, it's nothing like that. It's very sweet, very adorable. Historical setting. What else? I mean, she's an older woman who's like technically like a spinster. The next story is called A Plum Job by Evangeline Priest. So I will check in when I finish that story. So I finished reading A Plum Job by Evangeline Priest. This was not my favorite. In this book we follow an orc who I think he works like security at this restaurant, and he has like a crush on the pastry chef whose name is Plum. And she is gonna go visit her parents for some holiday or whatever, and she wants a boyfriend to take home so her parents don't like nag her about like not having children or not being married yet. So she asks the orc, our main character, I forgot his name, is like Core or something, and he's like, yeah, sure, why not. He likes her, and she's also like into him. So it's like fake dating. He's very sweet to her. It's fine. They hook up, whatever. This wasn't unreadable or anything, but it was just not my type of writing. The dialogue was very like Lifetime, daytime TV, made for TV movie. Like, it's very kitschy. Is that a good word? I'm not sure, but like, just the dialogue was just like not the vibe. And I get that sometimes for TV and film, like sometimes the dialogue has to be a little like on the nose or a little over the top, especially in a romance, to like make it work. But with words in a book, you have like, I think, the opportunity, the ability to kind of be a little more subtle with it. It was just like not something that I like to read. It was very much like that type of dialogue. And sometimes there was blocks of dialogue where they're just going back and forth, and it's like, you could use your words too, you know? I'm referring to the author, like she could use her words to talk about stuff. I even fell asleep last night while I was reading the spicier moment, and I just crashed. I was like, I'm not into this right now. So I fell asleep, and then I finished it this morning. It was okay. Like maybe like 2 stars if you're into something like this, but I just wasn't in the mood for this one. I have no idea about Plum, who she is. Like, we really just jump into it, and I remember thinking, oh, like this author I know writes obviously other stuff, and I think her other books are kind of in connection with this one short story, and I thought maybe I'll read some of her other stuff, but after reading this one, I'd say probably not. Maybe her longer work is better, but there are like a ton more authors that I want to check out before giving a chance on this one again. So not successful here. So I finished the next story, which was A Calling of Fur and Fate by D. St. Home, and I'm happy, but I'm also kind of bummed. I'm happy because this one seemed really cool and well thought out. Like, I think, well, before I get into it, this was about this girl who's been like trapped in some sort of like religious prison or something. She goes into this like dream message with this like goddess or whatever, and this goddess kind of like hints at like she has like a bigger fate, and part of her fate has to do with like this one night thing. Anyways, romance, whatever. It's very like Beauty and the Beast. Like, I don't want to give too much away because it seems like the author has created this like really cool fantasy world. It says from the lands of the spreading dark. I guess this is like her fantasy world, her series, this author series. And I was like, oh, this is like really cool, and I think the writing's pretty interesting and very intriguing. The romance aspect of the short story was like, again, really thrilling, and I was really interested to like continue reading because this is supposed to be like kind of like a prequel to this series that the author is writing. And so I was like, well, maybe the series is out and I can, you know, read it sometime, or it will be out soon. And I tried looking up this author and this particular series, and I did find the author's like page, but I couldn't find anything about this series. And I was like, well, maybe it's another pen name that they're writing under. I couldn't find anything. I found like 2 or 3 of their works on their like Amazon page, but I couldn't find anything else, which is like sad because I actually thought this sounded interesting. Aside from the romance bits that I liked, the fantasy story also seemed really cool, but I couldn't find more, which sucked. I thought this was a pretty good story after like the bad one that I had before. But yeah, it's a Beauty and the Beast-esque type story. There's this knight that gets turned into some monster, and you know, she's involved with him. I didn't mention this, but I think all of the books or all of the short stories beforehand have like tropes and trigger warning type information before you read on. If any of these stories might cause you any discomfort, you have warnings before you go into it. If you buy like the ebook or the physical copy, I think there's some as well that are available. So just kidding about that last clip. I'm really dumb, and I did like 5 more minutes of research, and I found the author's like other pen name, and I'm following that account as well now. So I'm following this author now and their other like pen name account to read what else they've written. Yeah, sorry about that. I did actually find this author's work. My bad. Can't wait to read what else they've written. I'm looking at their other work and it seems interesting, so maybe I'll read from them soon. So, hi, I finished the next story, which was The Spelled Bruise by L. Cross. This one was like almost like a perfect short story romance. In this one we follow a young woman who's, I think, a witch, and she goes to this like nice prestigious like elfish university. She's I think she's either a master's or a PhD student. If you hear snoring, he's snoring, sorry about that. But she is a student with some high aspirations, and then one night she goes to a bar that her friend works at, and she meets three orcs who are part of the same clan, and they're like all really into her and they want her to be their mates. It's a why choose monster romance. It was like a very good lighthearted read for the majority of it, and then like the last chapter or two, the author added in like this weird outside threat that was pretty much almost resolved as soon as it became apparent, which I didn't think the story needed. This is a short story, so you don't have to throw in so much in these short pages, these short like word page count or whatever. There was already a conflict, and I don't want to give too much away, but our main character, her name is Capricorn, she assumes that it's gonna be like a one night stand, and the orcs weren't super clear about her being, you know, their mate, if she wanted to. And I think that in itself was like enough of like a conflict. It's very light miscommunication, which is fine for like a short story. Again, we don't need all this bobs and whistles for a short story. But then she added, or this author, I don't know, I've never read from them, but this author then added another conflict towards the end that was unnecessary, because it kind of distracted from the whole romance for me. So it was almost like perfect. It was almost like, oh, I'll give this one like a 4 or 5 stars. I'll give it like a 3.5 if I had to. But this was on the higher end of stories that I've read so far. I'm gonna like maybe do superlatives at the end of the video, like best lighthearted read, the worst read, most creative, whatever. And for now, like the best like lighthearted romance, was between this one and CM Nacosta, because I already like her writing. I already like how she tells stories. But this one was going to be better than that one, because this author did a really good job of like explaining these characters and their backgrounds without it being too wordy in a short story. I got a good sense of who they were in such a short amount of time, which I think is great, and it was still fun and lighthearted. And of course there was like the steamy, spicy moments, which is always, again, fun. I think that's gonna be a huge draw for this collection. So almost perfect. We will get on to the next story. So I'm pretty much in the same position I was in last time, because I already finished the next story. It was very short. It was called Tempted the Fallen by Vivian Hart. I think this is what you can say like the first few chapters, or like the intro to a full-length novel that this author is working on. In this book we follow a young woman. Her name already escapes me. Eva. She's a human and she lives in a city called Monstrous City, whatever. And she's in a pretty bad relationship, abusive from what I can tell, and she escapes. She managed to get out of her home with her husband, from her husband, and like find some companionship on the one night that she's free. But she does eventually have to go back to her husband, and on her night out she meets a reptilian shifter monster creature, and they have a nice night together. And it's kind of like it's like happily ever after eventually, is what the author I think said in the introduction. So I think this author's working on this full-length novel and it'll get out eventually. I thought it was a nice like teaser for like a novel. I don't know if it's like the top of my priority list when it comes out, but I thought it showed some promise. I've read a few of these stories by now, and I think it's really interesting how authors approach like putting in stories for a collection. For some people it's like short little one-shots. For some people it's like a prequel to a novel. For some people it's like an excerpt. One of these stories has been in another short story collection, which is fine. Like I'm not whatever, do whatever you want as an author. I don't know which I prefer quite yet. I'll read the rest of these short stories and I'll like let you know what I prefer as a reader, what I like seeing when authors submit a story for a collection. Yeah, the story was fine, not bad. There were some moments that I thought were really nicely well written, and then there's some moments when I was like, okay, this is a little over the top, like overwritten. So I moved positions a little so I don't give you like the same angle for the majority of this video. I read Mastered by the Gladiator. That was the next story by LV. Is it by LV Lane? This is the first sci-fi in this collection, which I'm happy about. It's nice to have a sci-fi to break up most of this paranormal fantastical. It was fun. A lot of the tropes that you've seen in other like sci-fi romances, like abduction, that kind of stuff. But in this we follow a young woman named Cassiopeia, and she's human, and she has been abducted into like an intergalactic human slave trade, and her owners are at like a gladiator pit watching a bunch of aliens fight each other to the death, and then she is taken as a prize by one of the winners. So that's the premise. There's a little bit more to this one, a little bit more of like a background, which I appreciate. I always appreciate when an author is able to give us some more substance in such a short amount of time, and we got a little bit of that here. And it's also sci-fi. I love sci-fi in general because I haven't really found my sci-fi taste, I keep saying, but yeah, this one was fun, very entertaining. If there's no other sci-fis in this short story collection, then this would probably be like the best sci-fi. This is currently the best sci-fi. So I finished the next story. It was called The Monstrous Mistaken Bride by Ursa Dax. We're back to fantasy. This is fantasy. In this book we follow a young woman. I don't remember her name. It's like it's a very unique name. I don't remember it, but she's very, very, very broke, and she does the one thing that she knows that she can do. She's not very skilled in a lot of like trades. She signs up with the Matchers Guild or whatever to find a husband, essentially like a mail order bride kind of system, and she gets promised to this one man who's half orc, half dragon caste or whatever. And when she gets dropped off at his doorstep, he's like, oh, I actually just wanted an assistant. I misspelled like a orc word for like an English word bride. He just wanted an assistant. So he's like, I mean, you can still work for me. I'll pay you whatever. And she's like, that's great. I didn't even want to get married. I really enjoyed this one. I thought this was really cute, very creative. Let me see what kind of tropes. It's very like rags to riches. This one's a little bit longer, so the author had some time to kind of grow the story a little bit. And I actually really like this author's writing. In the author's note, the author mentions that they don't actually write a lot of fantasy monster romance. They're more sci-fi, which intrigues me because I want to read more sci-fi in general. So yeah, I think this one really jumped up to like my top like 3 or so. So yeah, I think this one's really, really good. It's also a little slow burn as you can be in like a short story, but they're very reluctant to like be honest about their feelings because employee-employer relationship. And she also did mention she wasn't wanting to get married anyways. So yes, I really enjoyed it. I thought it was cute, but I have even bigger news I thought I'd mention because I'm really excited about it and I just want to talk about this with someone. My best friend got us tickets to see Twice in Arlington, and I'm really excited. They were pretty pricey, and it's like the VIP, like it's like in the, you know, on stage where they have like a walk forward and then there's like a smaller stage where they can like walk into the crowd. We're standing right there, and he also got us like VIP like sound check package or whatever. So I'm gonna see Twice in June, a few days after my birthday, so I'm really excited. I wanted to share. Let me know if you're a Twice fan. Okay, bye. Okay, finished the next one. This one was pretty short. It was called You Can't Get There From Here by C. Rochelle. This is a story about a young woman named Billy who goes to her family's cabin out in Maine. She's getting ready to sell it, and while she's there, a like local cryptid wolf man comes across her and is like, hey, this is like my forest and everything in this forest is mine. Very short, straight to the point. This is like the definition of PWP. I mean, there's a little bit of a plot, but it's straight to business with these two. It was fine. This is actually a prequel for this author's series that they will be working on. So if you like cabins out in the woods, that kind of vibe, the author says that it's Stephen King creepy horror vibes. I've only read one Stephen King. I don't know if that's like a accurate statement or whatever. Can't really talk too much about it. It was very short. I am interested in this series that this author's writing. It's basically going to be like a kind of campgrounds for humans and any monstrous type characters to like come together in like a fun weekend for adults. You know what I mean? What I did like was that our main character is very well aware of like the monster romance genre, so she was kind of like, oh, I'm getting my moment now, which was kind of funny and witty. But one thing that I really did not like was the talking between the two people mid spicy moment. It was kind of cringe sometimes. I'm not a big fan of like screaming and yelling and hoot and hollering while people are doing their business together. Some of that dialogue was a little cringy. So yes, I'm sorry if you heard a bunch of noise. Someone's a little itchy. Pugsley, you want to say hi? I hope this isn't too boring. I mean, I'm having fun reading these short little romances, but I know how entertaining it is for you, like seeing me, hearing me like breeze through like summaries, because they are short, right? And they're kind of all gonna have a very similar arc. Two people meet, one of them's a monster. I'm hoping, what I haven't seen so far, I think this is the 8th story, I could be wrong, but nothing queer yet, which is unfortunate. I'd like to see more sci-fi. I think that would be fun. I'm trying to think if any of the women in these partnerships have been the monster and the guy's been the human. I think that would be interesting. I know monster romances typically are from the perspective of like a human woman. I think it'd be fun to see that be like shaken up a little bit. So, yeah. So I did finish the next story, which was called Dark by Atlas Rose, another author. Most of these authors I've never read from, so this is really fun to get new authors to read from like really quickly. This is like a Mothman one. This one was not my favorite. This is probably one of the weaker ones so far. In this, we follow a young woman named Violet who's out camping with her boyfriend, now ex-boyfriend, and another couple. Some things happen, a little drama, and she no longer wants to be with him, and she gets like rescued by the Mothman, however, or a Mothman type creature. It's not actually given like that name. And she gets rescued by him. They go to a cave and they have like fun, like sexy times, whatever. What's really interesting is that by reading some of these stories so quickly in like succession, I am able to see how well authors are able to do with the short page count, and some authors have done really well with pacing with the short space, the short storytelling that they have, and this one was weaker in comparison. This one kind of just went like straight through. I didn't really get a chance to understand who or what this creature is, or even our main character. She's just in some sort of drama with her boyfriend and she no longer wants to be with him. We don't get much more other than that. I don't know who she is as a person. And for some reason she kind of already knew who the Mothman guy was. Like there was no like, what are you, like what's going on here? She even already knew his name, and I was like, I feel like I was plopped in the middle of like a book, like a full-length book maybe. But this is only like a few pages long. Chapter 1 starts on page 364 and it ends around 390, so it's a very short story, which is fine. That's like the point of this. You could at least like make an introduction or something, because our main character already knew who this moth creature like man was. Why, I don't know how they met. She even knew his name, all this kind of stuff. So it's just like I feel like I'm in the middle of something full length, or just I don't know. So I'm trying to see if like the author explained that this was actually like an excerpt from a full-length novel or something, but I see nothing. It's literally just straight to Pound Town. So yeah, it wasn't my favorite by a long shot, unfortunately. Okay, anyways, but yes, that is the update for now. I just finished Curse of the Cyclops by Cleo Evans. This one was really fun and really creative, and I enjoyed a lot of the elements of this one. In this book, we follow a young woman, I think her name is Daphne, and she's a student at Cambridge. And while she's there, another student tells her about this like secret library with like really cool books. So Daphne goes to look for it, and she gets essentially trapped in like a Greek maze that's full of like Greek monsters. And while she's there, she finds two cyclopses who've also been trapped there for like 50 years, and together they're gonna try to make it out of this cursed library. It was really fun. It is a like throuple situation, so if you're into like you prefer or you really like when there's multiple partners in a relationship and they're not just focused on one person, they all seem to enjoy each other's company. This is one of those situations which I personally do enjoy. I don't think I've ever read a book with like a Cyclops love interest, or a story or anything like that, so this is like checking off a box for me, I guess. I also don't usually talk about the like intimate spicy moments in a book. Like I don't go into detail, or I don't usually rate them because that's such a subjective thing. Like whatever you're into reading, whatever, that's your business. I personally really enjoyed this one. I thought it was really well written and like fun and exciting, and I don't always get that from a lot of authors. So, and I think this will be another author I want to maybe check out later. I was looking at the description of one of their other works and it seemed interesting to me as well. So I would say this is a plus. Definitely a step up from the last book, or the last story, which was the one about the Mothman, I think. I think that was the last one. I could be wrong. But I really enjoyed this one. Very fun. So I finished the next story, which was called Soul of the Beast by Sonia Nova. This is probably, like, if I had to give this a superlative right now, it'd be like the most wholesome. This is also our second sci-fi short story. There's nothing too like heavy sci-fi element about it. It does not take place on Earth, doesn't really talk about like where it takes place. Not that it matters, because it's still very much just like a normal like town kind of setting, but this is wholesome and different from the others in a couple of ways. One, it's a sci-fi. Two, there's no spicy, smutty content, and I think it works really well here considering our characters and where they are in their lives. In this story, we follow a young woman named Alaya. I think that's how you pronounce her name. And she is working under some very harsh conditions. Her boss is verbally and physically abusive. I don't know if there's like a forced relationship there either. I don't remember quite well, but she's not being treated well there. And then she meets a person named Karg, and Karg was genetically created in a lab with like a basically like a brother. And then they meet. It's very sweet kind of romance, and together they kind of help each other like find self-worth. Karg is not humanoid looking from what I can gather. I don't really know the description of what he looks like, but he he typically gets like monster comments, is what people call him, like in a derogatory way. And Alaya also has burns on her skin from like a house fire, so they're both kind of not people that are looked at well. There's also a lot of discussions on specifically autism. I don't know if the author or knows someone who is close to someone, but there's a lot of discussions about that. Karg is not very good using his words. Eventually he does use a tablet to communicate, and I don't know if like the author was inferring that he also has autism. I'm not quite sure there, but it doesn't come across as malicious, and I'm not super familiar, nor do I know anyone who is autistic, so I don't know if it's like good rap or bad rap, but it does not seem like malicious at all. But yeah, it's like a really sweet, cozy, sorry, he just wants attention. It's just like a really sweet, adorable sci-fi, but nothing like too high stakes. But yeah, I really liked it. If you're looking for something cute and cozy. Maybe this story might fill that need. But yeah, this one's definitely like a standout. And I don't know if I would say it's my favorite, but I do think that I appreciate how different it is from the rest of the collection so far. So yeah, I did finish the next story. It was called The Monsters I Desire by Salem Cross. In the story, we follow a young woman who is pretty bitter about this breakup that she had with this like shadow cyclops creature from hell. Hell doesn't work quite the same as we understand it. It's not like a Christian hell really, but she's very bitter because this demon thing up and left her life one day without like any kind of warning. So she's like really pissed about that until this creature comes back into her life and is like, hey, I didn't like mean to leave you. I was actually like exorcised by like a priest or something, and I had to go back to hell and then like find a way back to her. And that's like pretty much like the beginning of the short story. Again, can't give too much details because then, you know, I'll give away the whole story. Yeah, it's basically like a second chance, kind of reunited lovers type story. The shadow creature is kind of different and unique in that like in hell it's just like this demon kind of creature, but on earth this shadow cyclops has like the ability to split into 3 different people with like 3 different personalities. I don't know. Basically it's kind of like a why choose, but also like not really, because it's still the same being. It was pretty quick, straight to the point, not a lot of like character work or background. Like I'm not super like into like, oh, I wish this was like a full-length novel, I want more from this world, because we didn't really get much. It was just like, here's our main character, here's a demon creature thing, they hook up, happily ever after, I guess. So I don't know if it seems like it to you all watching this, but like this is a pretty lengthy book of short stories. My Kindle says I have over 13 and a half hours left to finish this book. I don't know how quick these updates are going for you all, like if this feels like it's dragging. So yeah, I have been editing this video as I'm going, so it's just a lot of the same thing for me, but hopefully it comes out well on your end, and at the very least I'll introduce you all to some like new authors to try, or just maybe you want to try this collection for yourself or whatever. So the next story was called The Clingy Summon by Daisy Shell. Pretty much one of the more dullest ones here, and to be fair, the author did say like this was like a small part of like a larger series, I want to say, but this was a whole lot of nothing, and it wasn't enough to just like put a little piece into this collection because almost nothing happens. Like we've got the like inciting incident, and that's pretty much it. There's like no climax, there's no kind of like there's not really much. The author said it was like slow burn, but like not within like this actual story, you know what I mean? Here's the premise. Our main character is a half elf from one particular realm, and she's been writing letters to this other man who is from, well, she doesn't really know him too well actually. She just knows his name, and they've been talking, and then he like does this like summoning spell to get her to his world, his realm, and that's pretty much it. Like that is quite literally it. There's no romance. Like they already do have feelings for each other because they've been like pen paling, but that was like already pre-established before the story even like started. And like that's literally it. There was no like no getting settled in his realm. There's no nothing. Like this is quite literally like a piece of a story. Like it wasn't even like there's no little arc even within this like small, you know, like other authors have been doing in this collection. Like this was nothing. Like there's no romantic bits between the two of them, or even, you know what like it's just like nothing. Again, the author did say that it was like a short little bit of a story, but give me something to work with, you know what I'm saying? But yeah, not the best. And it's kind of like the creature, or the guy is like some sort of like spider thing. Again, don't really know, really didn't really get into the logistics of it because again, nothing happened. So, and I don't say that. If you've seen any of my reviews, I don't like the nothing happened type review because almost something always happens, but nothing happened. like at all. So I did finish the next story. It was called Within These Walls by Nova Blake. This one was weird, but like not in a bad way. Like I expect weird in these kinds of stories sometimes because of the content. In this book we follow an author who is like pretty sure she has a stalker. This person's leaving weird gifts at her home and she's very uncomfortable. She's gone to the police. They can't do anything about it because they're police. And so she's like, I've got to pack up my stuff and go. It's getting serious. It feels more violent. So she gets in her car and she just drives. She doesn't have a plan. She kind of just stops whenever she feels like it's the time to stop and stay somewhere safe. And she comes across this house that is not abandoned. It's just not currently like the owners of the home aren't there. And so she's like, okay, this is a good place to stop. And she basically squats at this house for the duration of the book. And her love interest is the house. And it's strange, of course. I don't know how this falls. Like, I mean, monster romance, I guess. I guess this is still kind of monster romance, even if it's the house. I will say that one thing I really enjoyed about the story is that, you know, if the author wanted to, they could workshop this book into like a really cool, like suspense, mystery, surreal horror type of thing. And I think it would work because you would think, sorry about the heavy breathing, my dog. You would think that with this kind of plot that it'd be very campy, over the top, ridiculous, her and this house getting it on, but it's actually kind of, I like the way the author is describing the relationship that this character has with this home that she found, how comfortable and safe she feels in a home that's not even her own. And I think that's something interesting to explore if the author wanted to, like, outside of like, this is just like a funny little rompy romance, because I think it was written well enough that the author could explore the story in a different angle than just it's a romance. So I like it in like as a writing kind of experiment almost, but not necessarily as like a romance. Like it was just ridiculous. Like she doesn't even know that this house is somewhat sentient for the majority of the story. If you ever do pick up this collection, read this as not a romance per se, but more so like a weird writing experiment. I like it in that way. But yeah, as a romance, it doesn't really give you much other than like a smutty, spicy scene. So yes, I have also kind of made the executive decision to cut this video into 2 parts because it's a very long book. It's about 30 short stories and it's just a lot, and I personally want to do other projects now. I don't like doing multiple video projects at once, so I am going to end the video when I read the next story. I believe it's 30 short stories in total, so 15 and 15. The next video will be my last. I'll wrap up this part 1 and then I'll get back to part 2 when I'm in the mood for more monster romances. But I definitely think this kind of like helped that fix that I wanted in the meantime, and then after that I will get back to like regular reading books. So yeah, I hope that's okay. I think 15 stories, it's about 500 and some pages that I've read so far of this book, which is still like a good chunk. And I don't have to read all of these in one go, in like one continuous type of thing. So yes, the next short story will be my last, and then I'll wrap up the video. I hope that's okay. It's my channel, but I still want to apologize for not reading the whole book in one go. So yes, I will talk to you when I finish up the next story, and then I'll just tell you my favorites, which ones I was disappointed in, all that kind of stuff. So yes. Hi, so I finished the last story for this video. It was called Welcome In by Vera Valentine, and this one was fine if you're a big fan of like folklore type characters. This one's like more Eastern Europe type folklore. I want to say definitely Russian, as well as I want to say maybe Finnish as well. But in this we follow a young woman named Dasha who is on a work trip, and on short notice the only place that she could find a place to stay is an inn that is run by some very peculiar characters. This one did kind of feature dubious consent, which is not like I have to be like in the mood for that, or in like the right the right vibe, and I wasn't feeling it So this one is definitely like in the middle of like how I feel about it in terms of like my ranking, which kind of brings me to the end of this video for now, part one. I will throw up a ranking here, I think, to kind of show you where my head's at with these stories. The majority of them were like good, enjoyable to fine. I think the last three are the only ones that I actually like have a problem with. A Plum Job, I just didn't like the dialogue. It's just not for me. It left like a bad taste in my mouth. What was the other one? The Clingy Summon, I think. That one, but it really felt like a chunk of a story that was not finished. It kind of just stopped. And then what was the last one? Dark. That one, you know, I know it's hard to kind of pace a short story, and this one was just by far like not done well in my opinion, but the others for the most part were fine. The top 3 or 4 or 5 were the ones that I really enjoyed, and I want to continue maybe reading from some of these authors. The first one, which was the Monstrous Mistaken Bride. I'm going off the top of my head. Overall, from the beginning to the end, really well crafted story. I loved the relationship between them. It's great. After that, I believe it was Hush Now. After that was The Curse of the Cyclops. That one I think was really fun. I've read from CM Nacosta before, so she was easily on my top. I like her work. And A Calling of a Fur and Fate, I thought was really creative. I wanted to read more from that one, and I do believe it's like a prequel to like a longer series or a longer book or something, and that one had like the most creative work put into it. So yeah, I hope you really enjoy this video, or at least you enjoy hearing me talk about this monster romance at length. Talk to me in the comments about anything that I've talked about. I'd like to hear your thoughts on anything down below. I will also link my social medias down below, as well as some far more important links. Feel free to like, dislike, comment, or subscribe, or do neither. It's all cool with me. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in the next one.